Bienvenidos a nuestra presentación de USHLI, United States Hispanic Leadership Institute, which held place February 20th to 23rd of the present year, 2020. I am Fatima Velasco, a freshman at UIS, majoring in accounting.
And I'm Lopez Medrano, and I'm majoring in sociology and anthropology at UIS. And today we're going to be talking about our experiences at the USHLI conference. So my experience, it was a lot about more for me for like atmosphere, if that makes sense. Um, a lot about kind of just seeing all the people there, all the different races, all the different ideals, all the different people, right? The USHLI conference, to me, my experience with it, was very empowering to see everybody there. And that resonating idea or running theme of us being the running majority, the raising majority, and being able to reclaim our power that we've kind of been told that we don't have, and realizing that we do have it. And we're like such a large group. We're the rising majority in the country. So I really appreciated that. I do think there could have been more intersectionality in terms of identities, and how they kind of like compound on each other, whether that's about gender or citizenship, or even focusing more on race and anti-blackness, colorism, things like that. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed the USHLI conference, and I continue to kind of reflect on the conference and my experiences and how I can incorporate them into my life, in a different multitude of ways.
So, for me personally, similar to Lopez, it served as a refresher. This conference served as a refresher and a reminder of where I come from and how that influences how my leadership skills and my experiences form me as a leader. Also, it made me more aware of the people around me. Like Lopez said, we are the growing majority, and that one day we will hopefully regain what we once lost and was were taken away from us, and how that should serve as a reminder of, hey, you should be a leader as well, and you should empower what you have already gained from previous experiences, and that just because you are a minority right now doesn't mean that your voice isn't heard or that it shouldn't be heard. Now, diving into our presentation, we would like to focus on workshops that stood out to us and that relate to each other. Um, a workshop that we both attended to and were interested in was La Cultura Cura by Marta Villegas Miranda. She is a senior academic advisor in Dallas, Texas, and is an activist supporting young adults in their leadership skills and their cultural awareness. Villegas Miranda mostly focused on how your roots of your culture strengthen your leadership skills and roles in your communities. This includes how you were raised and the beliefs that you have carried along with you and your family, how they form you as a person and specifically as a leader, and how you should be empowered by those roots. Now, with those roots and awareness, knowledge that you grew up with, you're able to connect that to others and connect both experiences, both cultures, both roots, in order to gain alliances, in order to gain allies and partnerships. And a great example of this that is known is Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, and how they came to form the United Farm Workers in order to support their own people that weren't getting what they deserved despite their hard work. And this shows a unity in order to overcome racial violence that not only one race or one ethnicity experiences, but many races and many ethnicities experience between each other. And this should serve us as a reminder that we should really be focusing on becoming allies and forming those partnerships that will help that unity in order to overcome that violence. And this goes on to saying that multiracial and multicultural alliances will serve in order to better the country, better ourselves, better our culture and roots in the future, and in order for races to become more fluid and more present, and in a non-binary way to like the racial system that we have now, that people are categorized under whites, honorary whites, or collective blacks. And like Lopez mentioned earlier, that there's lack of identity in between our own race, like your own people, you're not able to identify within themselves because we are lacking that lack of alliance. We're lacking that alliance and partnership. A quote that really stood out to us that Yanda Villegas focused on is, "You should always walk like you have 3,000 ancestors with you," which serves as a reminder that your roots are always present with you no matter where you go. It serves as a reminder that you should be aware of where you come from and where you're going, and it makes you feel wanted in your leadership skills and roles and opportunities that you may become present with. It also reminds you of the blessings that you have and that your ancestors have acquired for you, that have worked hard for you to be where you are right now. And also is a reminder of the sacred purposes and teachings that your ancestors and our ancestors have gathered for us to know and use them to strengthen and empower each other and other races as well.
Mm-hmm. Going on from that idea of remembering your roots, right? And remembering your culture and your history. I think that's a really core idea to, if you understand yourself and your history, then you can better bridge the connection to other people, especially when it comes to marginalized people, because then you can see that shared struggle or that shared oppression, if that makes sense, and kind of bridge and come together and unify. And that's mainly what Ramona Houston in her presentation, Sin Fronteras, talks about. So Ramona Houston, she's an American history scholar. She got a PhD in history and in civil rights and in race relations, particularly when she specializes in um, race relations between African Americans and Mexican Americans. So through her presentation, she really focused on this idea of building multicultural and racial alliances. So whether that means being an ally, whether that's a partnership or a coalition, but this is her purpose, right? So in the presentation, she talked about why is it important, right? And she talks about this kind of theme that we see throughout history of lack of solidarity between different marginalized groups, between Blacks and Latinos, Latinx people. So we can see this lack of solidarity and how this divide and conquer strategy that has been put in place, so that instead of unifying, coming together and using our collective power, we kind of instead are pitted against each other. So then we have less power altogether. And then when she talks about this, she talks about how she talks about she talks about what the challenges are to building this coalition. So she talks about a lot of different things, whether that's concepts of difference, and what that means is kind of this idea of how you think about each other, and you think of yourselves as too different to one another to be able to relate to each other, and also in terms of competitive environments. So this idea of scarcity, if that makes sense, that if you win, then that means that I lose, which then kind of creates this environment where it's not cooperative. It's not trying to uplift each other. It's just trying to tear each other down, because we think that if you win, then you take away my opportunity, which is not true. Then we have the myth of utopia. So then it's kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy where you think that this ideal of like perfection, of like um, multicultural alliances have to look perfect and in this type of a specific way, when really it's like, as long as we start moving towards that direction, towards getting rid of these separations that have been created. And then beliefs about other groups was a really big main one. Actually, during the presentation, we separated into little groups, and we all about different races, and we talked about the stereotypes, the things that kind of prevent us from coming together and unifying. And then a major one is also this idea of society being structured to separate, to maintain separations. And that's a central idea when it comes to the challenges, because once you realize that, then you have to start asking yourself, who profits from that, right? And then why is society structured that way, right? And then that's when things start to come together, especially in terms of leadership, because it's like, as a leader, are you going to continue to let these separations continue and kind of break apart your movements or make them less strong as they could be? Or are you going to bridge across these separations? So that's kind of what she was focusing on. And then now that we focus on the challenges, we have to talk about the solutions. So one, Ramona really focused on meeting each other as human beings at the table. So seeing each other as people versus only seeing the stereotypes or the things we've been raised to believe about other people that are seen as separate from ourselves. She also talked a lot about recognizing the resources that each partner could bring to the table from our different experiences. And then she also talked about stop engaging in conversations and actions that demean other racial groups. So then we don't encourage the stereotypes and perpetuating those just on misconceptions. We also focused on discussing problems and action plans, whether that's anti-Blackness, and that's very prevalent in the Latinx community, whether that's colorism or gentrification, a shared struggle that both groups are impacted by. And then another one is being willing to compromise with each other. I think that's a really big one because compromise is needed, especially when there's a history of, or there's defensiveness, if that makes sense. And then another one is also I know there's more with organizations, but what it comes down to is kind of like these 4 ideas of educate, education, application, evaluation, and iteration. So then I think even if you follow that in your regular life, educating yourself and then applying that, or with an organization, and then constantly evaluating, and then just repeating the process, I think that can really help us actually move toward these multicultural, multiracial alliances. But to end off this presentation, I just want to have a call to action to people, whether that's to leaders in the world right now in this crazy world, and how we can kind of create leaders that unify people, right? But without further marginalizing the most vulnerable in these groups, whether that's Afro-Latinx people that are in the intersections of both identities, or whether that's people that don't have citizenship. Just trying to be better leaders by not increasing the divisiveness, and instead realizing that only collective liberation is only available through collective action. Like we can't be liberated till everybody's liberated, basically. But yeah, thank you for coming to our presentation.
Thank you.